times with the help of like other like programs just to see what other alternatives are there to what I can name this thing. Because those two things, what you see and what the title of the video is, heavily influence your click-through rate or how many people click on it based on, like, as compared to how many people saw it in the first place. So that click-through rate within the first hour, YouTube is telling us on the back end in the YouTube Studio app what your click-through rate is, how it compares to the last video you released, where this video ranks in comparison to the last 10 you released. So pretty much within 30 to 45 minutes, you can know, okay, I'm a failure. Like this video is a bomb. Nobody likes it. And all that 2 weeks I put into that, or even longer in some cases, is not really going to translate to income in this case. So the algorithm rules everything, to answer your question directly.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the videos that aren't quote unquote successful, they only bombed because yeah, people didn't click, but that doesn't mean the content in and of itself wasn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just as strong as, the video you made 2 weeks ago. It's just that the algorithm decided, for whatever reason, a combination of factors, as Mark mentioned, that it's not going to, even in some cases, show it to the people that subscribe to you. As you mentioned before, 116,000 people chose to press that button on my channel. And sometimes I'll release a video to this day, and it won't even show it to a large percentage of those people who chose to see my videos.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, Mark, so there's YouTube is a perfect example of a couple of different things that our digital world has allowed for. First of all, it's kind of this democratizing effect, right? People have access now to the world that they didn't have before, both as consumers and creators. But then, similarly, because of the algorithm, there is this sort of push towards algorithmic homogeneity, if I can call it that, right? Because like we already can parody, like, hey guys, welcome back to my channel, blah blah blah, all that. There's a certain like approach and look and tone that's become its own culture within YouTube, but that's because those types of videos tend to have a lot of views.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, some of that is the algorithm, some of that is just the nature of YouTube, and it's this is this it's like if we go back 20 years, it is pretty dramatic to think about a world now where there were no producers deciding what's the 8 p.m. slot on NBC, right? Like what does well on cable television. And so a lot of creators in early YouTube, I think it's still the same, they're looking to see what does well and they're trying to imitate that. And so you saw unboxing videos as a perfectly really interesting genre that came up, and especially with toys. And once one unboxing video starts to take off, and then everyone else, a lot of other people jump in to make unboxing videos. Mr. Beast is probably the world's biggest YouTuber. His style is now being replicated by countless number of other YouTubers who are trying to do the exact same thing because something that Mr. Beast is doing is succeeding and getting an audience. And so some of that is the algorithm, some of that is just a function of this really fascinating media that doesn't have, to your point, it doesn't have anyone telling us what you should watch and who's programming what. It's kind of this free for all, which makes it really interesting. But sometimes we have really no clear direction where it's going.
Someone either already has or needs to write their PhD thesis on the unboxing video, because it is so amazing to me that people will spend. I mean, they are compelling watching somehow. Like the idea of just like touching packaging and figuring out how wires are wrapped is like compelling watching. But back to sort of how people are served up information on YouTube, we actually asked Kurt Wilms, again, he's Senior Director of Product Management there, why it seems like YouTube's search is getting worse. And this is something that Google overall has been subject to the same criticism. I mean, for example, now when you put a search term in YouTube, you might see 10 or so videos that seem to match thematically your search, but then there's a bunch of other unrelated content after that. So here's what his answer was to that.
We're constantly experimenting and evaluating and trying to improve it. Mainly our goal is to get the videos you're looking for in front of you as quickly as possible. And so that's going to always be the goal of search. We also are getting more into personalizing your search results. So you can kind of see a generic search result. And then if you scroll down, we'll take all those search results and we'll try to kind of modify it based on the types of things you watch. So to kind of filter out and make it more narrow. But really, search is all about giving you the videos you want, trying to show them to you, get them to you as quickly as possible. And so we're going to continue to invest in making it better.
Cam, James, what do you think about that?
I think that YouTube's search is confusing. It's confusing in that YouTube's, proposed goal, right, is to earn themselves more money. And you would think that they would prioritize accuracy of a search, relevancy of a search, and pair that with the videos that are the most popular. That wouldn't make sense on the surface, but it seems as if the constant tweaks to the algorithm or whatever that's being prioritized at YouTube HQ at any given moment leads them to make certain changes that don't goal. Like, why are we serving up these confusing search results or non-relevant search results to people's queries when doing that is actively losing you money as a platform that you could be earning? Like, that's a microcosm of the type of decisions that as creators we see impact us and impact our bottom line on a regular basis.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left here, and I do want to spend some time talking about sort of that darker side of YouTube, if I can put it that way. Now, Mark, people like Cam are actually taking misinformation that's out there, right, and scams and lies and calling it out, right, and creating very compelling watching by saying, hey, like, this stuff is wrong, you can't prove this, etc. But he can only do that because that exists. And YouTube is one of the biggest, I mean, you talked about this earlier, it was one of the biggest sort of spreaders of disinformation and misinformation. That's why we had you on the show last time a couple of years ago, because researchers had found that the algorithm was very quickly like putting up Nazi content if you left the autoplay on. Has that gotten any better?
I would say that YouTube is certainly put a lot more attention on that, and the COVID pandemic was an inflection point, right? I think that was that they made some pretty major changes there as far as especially around videos around COVID-19, around the vaccines, around virus, around health. That felt the constant. I think the first time the company kind of woke up to the consequences there of misinformation in people's lives. And to be frank, like, they have faced a lot more pressure from politicians and regulators. And I think they've responded in both there and certainly some of the like climate issues, flat Earth you mentioned earlier, those kind of conspiracies. It is now, like, we are under this new presidency, kind of the company, like other social media companies, are swinging back in a different direction where they have been accused on the right politically of censoring, of having a bias against conservative voices, and so I think they have been tapping the brakes on some of that and trying to strike the right balance. And often the company's MO is just stay out as much controversy as possible.
Yeah, I was gonna say
whatever
that balance is depends on who's in the White House.
Yeah, that's true. And YouTube is, and I talk about this in the book, has had this really beneficial relationships where Facebook has been it's seen most of the ire from politicians, from regular people, and YouTube has been this like sleeping giant in the world that doesn't get a lot of attention.
Maybe it's because it's so ubiquitous that people don't even think about it.
I think that's probably true. It's like a utility. It's like the air. It's like the light that we turn on, and we don't really think about that.
That is a good analogy, actually, Mark. And so Cam, you're going to get the last word here because we've only got about a minute left. YouTube has both helped you craft this new career, reach hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of people, but it also, like it's kind of it's an unforgiving boss in terms of the algorithm. Where would you like to see your career vis-a-vis YouTube go from here?
I've always been very particular about the content I make and who I'm intending to reach. I'm not a person who's tap dancing for the algorithm to try to maximize my viewership. I'm trying to make things that stand the test of time and leave a legacy with everybody that my content touches. And so I'm not after wild growth. I don't want to be Mr. Beast, but I do want to continue to be able to support myself while also supporting a team in the future and just make things that can match the impact of Hollywood films, of, indie documentaries, and cover the topics that we aren't able to touch. Sometimes that's very difficult given the algorithm and the restrictions that YouTube puts on us as creators, but I'm going to keep trying because this platform was built on that, and I have no intention of changing my promise to my viewers anytime soon.
Well, the channel is called Cam James, and it's content created by Cam James from Atlanta, Georgia. He's with us today at WABE in Atlanta. Cam, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Maia.
And Mark Bergen, reporter of Bloomberg and author of Like, Comment, Subscribe, Inside YouTube's Chaotic Rise to World Domination. Mark, it was great to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to say subscribe, but not to On Point's YouTube channel, but to our podcast channel, wherever you get your podcasts. I guess you can like and maybe not comment, but definitely subscribe there. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. This is On Point.
On Point is a production of WBUR Boston and is distributed by APM, American Public Media.
Support for On Point comes from BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public. And WBUR presenting Endless Thread, a podcast about the internet's untold histories and unsolved mysteries. From stories about a mountain of dishware in the woods to the world's largest glitter consumer. Endless Thread. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This is KUOW-FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham. It is almost noon on a Friday. That means it's almost time for KOW's Week in Review. Here's your host, Bill Radke.
Hey there, we're going to talk about the week gone by. That's what we do on Fridays here. We're going to talk about the self-described pro-life Christian group that rallied in Capitol Hill opposing same-sex marriage and transgender rights. You had police separating ralliers from counter-protesters, some of whom pushed back, and assaulted officers who pushed back. Many arrests, and we're going to ask whether the city should have done anything differently, among other questions. Also, why has Starbucks lost some customers in its hometown? What made us smile this week? We always ask and answer. Those are, I hope, some reasons to stay tuned.
I'm going to stay tuned.
Good. Well, there's one.
All right, everybody join me.
Yeah, everyone in the pool.
Let's do it. The Trump administration has ordered extra vetting for all visa applicants linked to Harvard University. That story coming up in the news in a minute. Sunny and 65 degrees in South Seattle.
NPR is everywhere you are. You can explore on the go with the NPR app.
Oh.
Learn something new while scrolling through Instagram.
Everybody's obsessed with Stick Nation, but what is it?
Groove along to a Tiny Desk concert on YouTube. And of course, you can always listen on the radio. Help keep us strong wherever you're listening by making a gift to this station today. Thank you.
Every gift helps. Give now at KUOW.org.
Support for KUOW comes from 6 Arts, introducing 27 newly remodeled workspaces in Seattle's Georgetown neighborhood for those with artistic pursuits or small enterprises, currently offering lease options. Open house and tours available June 11th, 3 to 7 p.m. More info at 6-arts.com. And from AARP and BECU, with speakers from the Allen Institute, the University of Washington, and AARP discussing research and the aging brain. Online event on June 5th, open to all with pre-registration. More at aarp.org/brainhealthwa.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. This is Elon Musk's last day as a special government employee. The billionaire joined President Trump in the Oval Office a short time ago to take reporters' questions about his transition away from oversight of DOGE, the entity of government-wide funding cuts and layoffs. But Trump's keeping the door open for Musk to continue a consulting role.
We're totally committed to making the DOGE cuts permanent and stopping much more of the waste in the months to come. We want to get our great, big, beautiful bill finished and done.
Musk's tenure had been overshadowed by criticism, including conflict of interest concerns and concerns about the extent of his influence over President Trump's decisions. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says his staff must do additional vetting for any visa applicant applying to go to Harvard. That means not just students, but also faculty, guest speakers, and tourists. NPR's Michelle Kellerman has details.
Secretary Rubio has been revoking student visas and expanding the social media vetting of applicants in response to anti-Semitism on college campuses. In the case of Harvard, he's now extending that to anyone planning to visit the university. In a cable seen by NPR, he directs consular officers to maintain extra vigilance and to comprehensively review all applicants planning to go to Harvard for any reason. The State Department wouldn't comment on the leaked cable or say why he's singling out Harvard, which is suing the Trump administration over a decision to bar international students from the university. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Israel's military has issued a new displacement order. It encompasses all of northern Gaza and large parts of Gaza City. The order directs Palestinians to move into a sliver of territory along the Mediterranean coast. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports it also includes a key hospital.
Even before this latest evacuation order, the UN noted that more than 80% of the Gaza Strip was either inaccessible or under evacuation orders by Israel. This new order impacts one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in Gaza City and the Al Ahli Baptist Hospital. It's one of the few in Gaza City that offers emergency care. Meanwhile, aid groups say people are facing extreme hunger across Gaza following nearly 3 months of Israeli blockade. A limited amount of aid was distributed by American contractors this week under a new plan by Israel to control food supplies. The rollout has been chaotic, with Palestinian health officials saying Israeli gunfire killed 8 and wounded more than 60 people on their way before reaching the food parcels. Israel has only acknowledged firing warning shots. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
U.S. stocks are mixed this hour. The Dow is now up 56 points at 42,272. From Washington, this is NPR News.
This is KUOW News. I'm Derek Wong. The federal government is moving to formally dismiss a criminal fraud charge against Boeing. The Justice Department filed the dismissal documents yesterday, asking a judge to cancel an upcoming trial connected to 2 deadly 737 MAX plane crashes. Documents filed last week revealed that the Justice Department and Boeing had reached an agreement for the company to spend more than $1.1 billion in return for dropping the criminal case. About half of that money will go to families of the crash victims. A judge will decide whether to accept the dismissal motion. A woman who has been a legal permanent resident with a green card for 50 years has been released from the Tacoma Immigration Detention Center. Immigration authorities detained 64-year-old Llewellyn Dixon in February at SeaTac Airport following a return from a family trip to the Philippines. She spoke to a large crowd of family and supporters just moments after she walked out of detention yesterday.
It was horrific. It was awful. It is crowded, super crowded. They release maybe 9, they bring back 7, they release 1, they bring 3.
Immigration officials cited the fact that Dixon was convicted of embezzlement in 2001 as a reason to deport her. The judge said she considered a number of factors in deciding to release Dixon, including her recent history of work and paying taxes. Dixon says she expects to return to her job as a lab technician for UW Medical Center. And a Memorial Day hike ended with a drone-assisted mountain rescue for a group of Washington teenagers. The teens found themselves stuck on a rocky scramble on Mount Si, known as the Haystack. They called 911 for help, and Seattle Mountain Rescue responded by deploying a drone, which helped rescuers locate the youth. This is KUOW News. I'm Derek Wong.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
Welcome to Friday. Welcome to KUOW's Week in Review. My name is Bill Radke. I've convened a group of likable people. We were just chit-chatting here before we go through the week's news. I'm talking with Commute Seattle Executive Director Alex Hudson. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Bill.
Seattle Times Editorial Board member and opinion writer Alex Fryer. Hey there.
Right.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
And you can see him because we're on YouTube. We're definitely here. We got Executive Director for the Center for Latino Leadership, Maia Espinoza. Welcome back, Maia.
Hi, Bill.
Hi. And I was just starting to tell you, I was asking if you know about The Last of Us, this HBO show. and none of us have seen it.
No.
I'm aware because this is like it's a zombie show. What did you call it? The fungus.
They're like the brain fungus.
Yeah, brain
show.
fungus show shot in Seattle. Like every show and movie, it's not geographically accurate. It's not an atlas. It's entertainment, and yet I keep hearing Seattleites saying, "Hey, that actor was standing on this street. I know that street. How could they now be standing over there?" And so today I'm observing a centennial. On May 30th, 1925, in Los Angeles, they were screening a silent movie. It's a Buster Keaton movie. I just made that up. And one viewer watching this movie said, "Hey, you can't see Sunset Boulevard from Santa Monica." And the person next to him said, "Yeah, that's how motion pictures will always work."
Yeah.
And then since that day, no one in Los Angeles has ever bothered to make that observation again, or New York, or Seoul, or Paris. Only in small towns like Seattle. So if you ever feel that Seattle has gotten too urban, too urbane and big, I would just say, listen to how we react whenever we watch something that was filmed here. We are still a charming backwater.
You can't get used to the view on Frasier.
Right, we
That
just
still
can't get
bugs
you.
you.
Yeah.
No.
Just so weird.
Just amazed that we're outraged that a movie about a parasitic brain virus that turns people into zombies
Yeah.
isn't totally accurate.
Right. You can't see the space needle from that spot.
I did actually do this recently. I watched something filmed in Seattle, and I looked at it and said, you were at that block. You're heading that direction. Pioneer Square is south. Okay?
Right. I'm out.
I'm so guilty.
So
it's
true.
terrible.
Well, because we're a small town, and I like it that way. So let's talk about. Should we talk about the news of the week?
We should get to that, huh?
Because wow, this group that rallied on Capitol Hill this week. Did you know they want to come back?
I saw that.
Yes, they filed. This group called Mayday USA. They rallied at Cal Anderson Park and then at City Hall a little bit later, and they were denouncing abortion and same-sex marriage and what the group called transgenderism. And as you would expect, counter-protesters gathered, mostly peacefully, and SPD, the police department, alleges that, as you would expect, some counter-protesters were not peaceful and they threw things at cops and allegedly, in some cases, at ralliers. I was not at these demonstrations, and we haven't heard all the court cases go through. There were 23 arrests just at Cal Anderson, and police. I saw video. Police, roughing some of them up. I don't know what happened when. Anyway, this group, the leaders of this group, are apparently both appalled and delighted. Right. And they have applied to come back to Cal Anderson Park in August, and the city has yet to grant that request. So. Let's start with that. I want to know from any of you, does anyone know anything the mayor, the police department, the counter-protesters, the peaceful counter-protesters should have done differently, if anything? What could have made this turn out better?
Well, I think it was a rousing success.
This is Maia.
Hi.
Hi.
I mean, a success in terms of it definitely was a public demonstration that caused, public attention. So it doesn't surprise me at all that this group wants to come back and have a repeat. They already had a repeat. They already had a part 2 where they came back a couple days later.
To City Hall.
You're right.
Yeah.
And so I think, by any measure, when you're trying to do a public demonstration and draw attention, whether it's, Antifa riots in front of Nike, downtown Seattle, or it's a Christian pro-life group in the center of Capitol Hill, it was successful in that it got a ton of attention and media coverage. So not surprised that they're coming back. What could we have done differently to minimize, violence and that kind of thing? I don't know. I mean, there's really got to be a big shift, I think, in the attitude towards police, but also the police response to this kind of thing. A lot of that is earned. A lot of it is, over time, this kind of, defund the police and everything else. So I think it goes both ways. The police have a responsibility to make sure that they're interacting with the public appropriately if they want to see that reciprocated back to them.
Yeah, I mean, I am a freedom-loving American who got my political origins in the ACLU. So I defend everybody's right to speak their minds to their government and to each other, even if their message is, in my estimation, in this case, repulsive and harmful. But the Constitution doesn't prevent us from having common sense. And the Supreme Court has long established time, place, and manner restrictions around people's First Amendment rights that make it so that the government can uphold important goals like public safety. And I just don't see how the government suggesting Cal Anderson as a place where this hate rally could go down would lead to anything other than this outcome. Like,
Can I clarify a little bit there? Because this is going to be relevant. So this group, my understanding is they initially applied to have their rally next to Pike Place Market, and that the city said that doesn't work for size and logistics. I don't know more about what went into that. And then I saw an email, right? There's been reporting that the city, I'm not sure all the timeline, but the city suggested that there's not that place, but there's Cal Anderson Park and there's this South Lake Union Park.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, did they suggest other parks? But according to the city, if a group, whether they suggested it or not, if a group says, okay, then we would like a permit for that park, then if the city can accommodate that, if they have the space, then the city can't say no. So they said yes.
Yeah, again, I'm not a constitutional lawyer here, but I don't know that the government is totally empowered to use time, place, and manner regulations in order to use their best judgment about where free speech events can happen and First Amendment events can happen, and should take into consideration the context of the time, place, and manner that it's happening. And given the history of the neighborhood, this is where I live, this is where I'm raising my family.
On Capitol Hill.
On Capitol Hill. I live on First Hill, but right by here. This is entirely predictable that this would become so inflammatory, right? People in this community are feeling extremely under attack from the same kind of set of folks. And so the idea that it could be anything other than a major provocative event, I think just doesn't really kind of pass the sniff test.
Well, as a journalist, I'm kind of sensitive about the First Amendment and freedom of speech. And, when I heard the scenario of the city bureaucrats saying, well, you can't go there, you can't go in Pike Place Market because you have to close streets down. If you close streets down, but people can't do business. But here's another bark or two. I was kind of heartened that we have some customer service left in the city of Seattle, good going public employees. It's not their job to determine what venue is more controversial than another. I don't trust government to figure that out. I don't know whether it would be sort of offensive or extremely offensive. Who makes that judgment call on where you can have these kinds of venues? Their message was not meant to convert people. It was meant to create chaos. And that's what they did, and that's unfortunate. I feel like we handed this group a victory here in Seattle. And that bothers me.
If you do think they were here to create chaos, you're saying you don't want the city leaping from that opinion to therefore Cal Anderson is where we don't want this rally.
Yeah, I think in the ideal world, and I understand that this is probably not the real world, but a group like that comes into town, and you kind of just ignore them. If they had come in, done their thing, and everyone's playing Frisbee and taking their dog for a walk and like, oh, there's some people over there with this really crazy, offensive thing, I'm going to go do my job, enjoy my day, they wouldn't come back. And
Does everyone agree with that this group was best ignored if you don't agree with them or don't like their message?
Well, I think part of the big problem here is that it became violent because it was, provocative and successful in that way. And the counter protesters were the ones, of course, the aggressors, throwing, water bottles or balloons full of urine, we heard in some reports. And, they were the ones being violent. So
about 25 of them. I mean,
right. But
to be clear, a minority. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't the demonstrators in the park outwardly being hostile, other than, of course, the things they were saying. But to your point, Alex, I mean, if it would have been ignored, it would not have made a story. I don't think they'd be coming back.
I think the vast majority of Seattleites ignored this protest, right? So we're talking about a small group of people who really have something at stake, right? Queer people, trans people experience disproportionate violence. There are much higher rates of overdose deaths, suicide deaths. They claim that they're doing this in defense of children. Trans and queer children are some of the most most endangered of being able to find a way to a successful adulthood. And so I think that it's perfectly rational that people feel deeply insulted and that they need to speak up for themselves, their community members, the people that they love and value, and should be able to do that. I wasn't there over the weekend, but I did go down on Tuesday to see what was happening at City Hall, and I saw somebody get arrested who was sitting on the ground. So I'm not entirely sure that we should, as you said, Bill, we should definitely be waiting until there is more information about what caused people to get arrested. There's plenty of reports that people were shouting, which again is maybe not everyone's favorite behavior, but certainly legal, and not necessarily grounds to be, by many reports, foisted over fences and arrested. So I think that our SPD, as you said, some of the best trained police officers anywhere in the country who have been under a consent decree based on this very issue for well over a decade now. And so I think there's some questions here, which is like, how do we make sure that this training that our officers are receiving is sticking so that they can be the people that we hide to the highest level of standards about their skills and ability to de-escalate situations before any of this happened? Because I totally agree, this is a win for the Mayday protest people.
Yeah, and I think that's the conundrum about freedom of speech, that the value of protecting speech doesn't derive from ideas with which you agree. It's easy to defend speech that you agree with. It's very, very hard to defend speech of which you find abhorrent. Neo-Nazi rallies and all the rest. And so it's really incumbent upon creating that scenario where one can express themselves. It's their constitutional right. But you try to avoid those kind of open conflict that we saw so often down in our sister city down to the south in Portland, that for years had Patriot Prayer and Proud Boys facing off against Antifa, and went on and on and on, exhausting the entire city. And what did it accomplish? Absolutely nothing. And we've got so many dire things in our lives that we need to pay attention to. No shortage of things to worry about, and to really try to coalesce together as a community to make a better future. So I just hope this isn't the distraction that it really could prove to be.
But Alex Hudson, sounds like you're saying that in at least some cases you're confident the police overreacted. But are you saying there could have been no arrests when people, if you believe the police, are throwing, I've seen, again, this is police statements, I wasn't there, rocks and water bottles and explosive. I don't know whether that's what's behind that. Pushing police off of bikes. This is the provocateur idea. This is Mayor Harrell's statement, was that he also said that there were anarchists who were deliberately roughing up cops. Is that also true?
Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm not a legal observer scholar, and I am not asserting that cops are overreacting. I'm just saying that I've been to many protests over my life, and I've been to many that have become quite heated, and no one's been arrested. I've been to protests where SPD are very present, and no one has been arrested, even though
they're getting assaulted and stuff thrown at them. And do you think it's best to just stand?
I'm
and
just
take it?
suggesting that there's a lot of different ways where this incident could have been de-escalated, and we could have prevented a deeply unnecessary distraction from really important issues. And once again, having Seattle be totally misrepresented in the national media as a place, I saw on Fox News, Seattle hates Christians. That's factually inaccurate and slanderous to God-loving people in our city. So I guess I'm just suggesting that there are many places in which this could have gone differently, and I hope that we continue to refine the manner in which we let people exercise their free speech, and the manner in which we do crowd control, and in order to make sure that people can do this kind of stuff peacefully. But yes, it is true that there are always going to be people across the board who are, itching for a fight. And so...
Well, that's why I'm asking if they're applying for a permit again. I don't know whether they'll be at Cal Anderson or not, but if they're coming back, and who knows what other groups and how often this happens, what could police do should they not try to be a physical barrier between the ralliers and counter protesters, which is the origins of the anger. Someone's pushing, someone's throwing. So what can the city do so that this, if anything, maybe it's just inevitable, but what could the city do anything to make this go differently in August?
I mean, I think the mayor could have definitely responded differently. The the police are kind of that last line of defense there. That's after everything has been staged and they have to respond. So I think, the mayor probably, should be making statements to try to de-escalate. Obviously, he did that a little bit after the fact and then it backfired. I don't think, the way Bruce Harrell handled the situation was well received by anyone.
He said it was a far-right rally
Right.
that was held here to, I'm quoting, to provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are inherently opposed to our city's values in the heart of Seattle's most prominent LGBTQ plus neighborhood.
Right.
This group was angry about that,
About
but you
that kind of
disagree with the
comment.
mayor's characterization?
No, well, not that, the mayor, of course, is a politician, and so he's going to say what he thinks he needs to say to make sure he's reelected. Unfortunately, I think he is probably a pretty fair, even-keeled kind of guy, but when something like this draws as much attention as it did, he was kind of backed into a corner having to make a very clear statement like this to, represent the people of Seattle. And I think that statement is reflective of the people of Seattle. Unfortunately, though, he totally pissed off people on the right by grouping everyone into that camp. Then he pissed off people on the left by saying that, but people demonstrating, are a distraction to this, and, then blaming basically the police for not doing enough, blaming his own administration, the Parks Department for not, handling. So
He said he's reviewing why they were at Cal Anderson Park, even though the Parks Department
We all
said
reviewed
because we have to say yes. That's their policy according to the Parks Department anyway. I don't know whether that'll change.
So we have a new police chief in town who is yet to be confirmed, Sean Barnes, and I talked to him last week or 2 weeks ago when he came into the editorial board, and I asked him about crowd control, because in Seattle, crowd control will be an issue for him, and he made some joke that like, gee, we had a protest here and I got all upset, and people's like, sit down, it's Tuesday. It's Seattle. We have protests all the time.
Yeah.
Did they handle this one particularly well? I don't know. We'll have to see. But I think we can say in Seattle, we take our protests very seriously, and they are almost always a loser's deal for the police, who just can't find that sweet spot, whether it's protecting property and or letting people express themselves. And there's a line in there that works, and there's a line that doesn't, and it's really a difficult thing to calibrate accurately. We've had in our past, if you've been into protests in the past, we've seen where we have not calibrated it properly. It's cost police chiefs their jobs. So we'll see how this guy can do, but he got quite a baptism on the job.
Maybe my last question, Alex Hudson, I think you accurately pointed out that most of Seattle ignored this protest because people have other things that they're doing in their lives, are barely aware. But this idea of ignoring a protest, or your colleague, Alex Fryer in the Seattle Times, Danny Westneat, wrote about, and he's written about this before, he's a fan of, he gave the example of people, counter-protesters, goose-stepping in clown uniforms, the mocking. What do you think is effective and ineffective when it comes to speech that you might feel offended by, threatened by, angry about? You don't necessarily want to just not show up. What's the best?
I think that's a really personal question, and I think it's going to depend on what the issue is and how you relate to it. I definitely subscribe to the irreverent and sassy mocking tone as a way to kind of really get at autocracy or totalitarianism. I think it's a really effective tool. I was amused. I saw a sign on Tuesday that said, "Your crappy music is a sin." And I was like, okay, so there we go. But again, I think that's just like a really personal.
I like that. I mean, nonviolent, another form of freedom of speech. I love that. I had read a little bit about a band that was playing playing different music, trying to kind of crowd out from outside. I mean, that kind of thing I think is fine. Non-violent, I mean, can we call water balloons of urine violent?
Right. Violent. Yeah, I don't know about that.
It's like those things, please don't.
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
poor police
Frozen water.
caught in the- yeah. So non-violent, de-escalation tactics. But does that fall on the police? Falls on the public.
Any opinion, Al? Oh, yes. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a charged issue right now, though, right? Because of how trans people and queer people are being treated by the federal government.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea that the sensitivities in that community are running really high right now makes a lot of sense to me. About
Do you think the city will change its policy and say you can, let's see, you can be in Magnuson Park, you can be in Discovery Park, but not Carolina Street? Do you think that's the future? The city will make. I don't know what the constitutionality of this. I don't know. Is that impinging on free speech to say you can be at this park but not that park?
Right. We need a Rob McKenna in here today.
Right.
I think it is. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. And I think there are also the things that cities do. Oh, you have to have a big security bond to
Right.
pay for police or something like that. And that has been found to be unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So it's a sticky wicket. I mean, I really do hope that folks will have some, some way to de-escalate some of these things, understanding how sensitive they are for people. I get that.
Yeah.
But I just hate giving folks who want to come and create chaos a win.
The
That sticks
heckler's
in my
veto.
craw. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Pause for now on that. We'll talk a little more about parks and what makes parks safe when we come back. We haven't left that totally, but for now we will watch these cases go through the courts, the felonies, the misdemeanors, and see what happens to these protesters. And I'll let you know when we get word about whether Mayday USA or Proud Boys or anybody else is coming to Seattle. Let's take a pause. We have more to say about the week gone by, so don't go away.
Week in Review coming right back in a minute here on 94.9 KUOW, Seattle's NPR news station. Sunny and 66 degrees in Seattle. Today's expected high, 76. It's 12:30.
On the latest episode of Meet Me Here, we head to the Chinatown International District for a new show about religion and pretend plane crashes, and a personal tour of some neighborhood art and culture hotspots. I'm Jeannie Yandel. Listen to Meet Me Here on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for KUOW comes from UW Medicine, recognizing the research community and thanking researchers for working to advance the scientific discoveries that can help improve health for everyone. More at uwmedicine.org. UW Medicine, a higher degree of healthcare.
And from Third Place Books, British naturalist Robert Macfarlane discusses his new book, Is a River Alive, with David B. Williams on Thursday, June 12th at 7 p.m. Tickets and details available at thirdplacebooks.com.
This is KUOW's Week in Review. We're live streaming on YouTube. Hello there. We've got here in the studio with me, by the way, I'm Bill Radke. We've got Seattle Times editorial board member and opinion writer Alex Fryer, the head of the Center for Latino Leadership, Maia Espinoza, and the head of Commute Seattle, Alex Hudson. And we were just talking about the Cal Anderson rally that then led to the City Hall rally. So before we leave parks completely, summer is arguably here, almost here, depending on how you count it. If it's been 80 degrees, isn't it kind of summer? It got warm. The days are long. Let's say you want to go to a park in the lengthy, languorous evening, and you come to find out it's closed an hour earlier than last summer. City of Seattle's closing Alki Park at the beach, Golden Gardens at the beach, at 10:30 this summer instead of 11:30 p.m., and adding parking lot gates at Magnuson and Gasworks Park to stop people parking there after hours. According to KUOW reporter Amy Radel, all this is about reports of crime and disorder.
Robert Johnson is president of the View Ridge Community Council. His group has pressed city officials to address what Johnson describes as large parties, reckless driving, property damage, and shots fired on warm nights in Magnuson Park in northeast Seattle. Johnson says people set up big speakers that can be heard across Lake Washington.
That starts the process of people congregating, and it just turns more serious when they're shooting off guns in the park.
Mayor Harrell's summer safety plan for the parks includes several changes at Magnuson, including new gates and barriers and an earlier boat ramp curfew of 10 p.m.
And effectively close this section of the park, which is where most of the partying and most of the incidents that occurred last summer occurred around this boat launch.
Side note, do you know why boat launches attract mayhem?
Well, I think the story said that it's open space.
Yeah,
It's a lot
big
of space.
flat
Big flat.
areas for boat trailers make for a good spot to test out that car you've been tricking out. Anyway, so shorter hours, new gates, also locking restrooms at night, more lighting, more park rangers, private security, hiring more police officers on voluntary overtime. Alex Hudson, are these good ideas?
Some of them. I love our park spaces, and I especially enjoy, being able to delight in how beautiful it is in the city in the summertime. And I think we should have more rangers. I'm on the board of the Freeway Park Association. Rangers are a big part of how we make our park feel as safe as people in our neighborhood want it to be. I'm a huge supporter of more lighting and design-based interventions. I think that it's so sad to see how much of this gun violence is about our teenagers, and I think we should follow the science, which is really clear, which is that summer jobs stop bullets, and that we should get some of these teenagers engaged in this ranger work so we can have them gainfully employed and helping to be kind of peer
Teenage
mentors.
park rangers.
Why not? But I don't think that closing the parks earlier is a great solution. I think that punishes everyone. I think that if you're trying to do crime, you are going to find a place to do it, and that we should try focusing on the solutions that can keep everybody safe and let the public enjoy the parks that they're paying for, before we go ahead and start just enacting more curfews.
I mean, we just had, a shooting down in Lakewood. It was considered a mass shooting, 7 people shot.
That's where you live.
Yeah, where I live. So it's not just a uniquely Seattle problem. It's a public spaces issue. And, I really find that libraries are becoming unsafe spaces because they're open to the public and people just hang out there all day, bring tons of stuff, and so it's no surprise to me that the parks have become a free party zone. I mean, that's what it sounds like, more than, real, damage being caused in the park. And, these interventions that you're talking about, Alex, I think I totally agree. Smart way to do it. Lighting, closing the park early punishes everybody. And I don't think it really gets at the issue. I do agree, too. Get these teenagers teen jobs in the summer. Get them making money. Get them engaged in something. But I think this is also just a byproduct of the city growing. It seems very, kind of big city like when we start, seeing things like this. And, we were talking about why is the waterfront, some of the hot spot for some of these issues? Because it's the best view in town. Everybody knows it. Everybody wants to get a selfie behind, with that kind of background. So I don't know that there's a ton that can be done other than pretty, broad policy changes to try to change the overall behavior, not just these little, park manipulation rules.
I'll be the odd person out in this debate then, because I am for closing the parks earlier.
What time?
Well, I think they close them at 10:30,
Yeah.
which seems
Is that perfect?
about right
Okay.
to me to try. I live in West Seattle. I live pretty close to Elki. I will tell you, on a really hot July Friday, Saturday night, there is a moment of time when it feels out of control. That there are so many people doing so many things, and different kinds of folks are having different kinds of disagreements with each other. And there are a lot of kids down there, and invariably shots are fired. And they've had people a couple of years ago was shot to death right across from the fish and chip shop. So it's a problem that they are responding to. It's a real problem. The city auditor took a look at some parks that were known to have gunshots into them and had listed them all the hot spots. The mayor's office responded by putting more police in those parks. I think that's a good idea. The number one park that the city auditor mentioned was Beersheba in Rainier Beach. That was not on the mayor's office list. I was kind of hoping that they do have officers down there, because I think that community could use and would want to see some officers during the summer. So I think all the good things that they're doing, lighting and locks and better bathrooms, those are all great. I do think there are times when the bigger seaside parks in Seattle do need to be shut down for their own benefit.
Alex Hudson says that, and I think Maya agreed, that punishes people who just want to. Summer is so short and so beautiful, and when it's warm, it's still warm at past 10:30. Do you worry about the loss in that?
I do worry about the loss of that. I also worry about the potential loss of life and a lot of people's injuries. There comes a time when you can just go down there and you feel like that, and like I said, it got out of control. That notion of saying, okay, the park is closed now, is a tool that law enforcement uses to break people up and to say, you can go somewhere else, but you can't be here because we've reached critical mass here, and it is not secure.
Do they go somewhere else and reach a
Of course
critical mass?
They may hopefully not reach critical mass. I mean, you have to see this to believe it. I mean, there's like thousands of people, right? It's a thing, and I think it's just a tool to sort of say, like, look, we can't guarantee the safety of the people who are here, so we have to take this step to close down. Hopefully, maybe we will get over our gun violence predilections, and we can go back to having parks are open a little bit later. But for right now, I think this is the move you got to make.
Okay, before we take a break, Alex Fryer, your newspaper, reported this week that Starbucks has lost customers, especially in Seattle. Why would that be?
Well, I think, gosh, there are a lot of different reasons. I think that's a great conversation to sort of think about. Starbucks is like, it's like a family friend or something, isn't it? We all have some kind of connection to Starbucks.
Yeah.
My feeling is that Starbucks closed a lot of stores in Seattle, and that's why their sales have gone down. I used to work in Pioneer Square, and first in Yesler there was a Starbucks, gone. Across from Occidental Square, gone. 44th floor of Columbia Seafirst Tower, gone. First and Pike, gone. I mean, just over and over and over.
The one outside where we're sitting right now is gone.
They're gone. Yeah. So why was this made? Was this like, well, drive-throughs have bigger margins? I don't know. I do think that security was an issue for some of these Starbucks, and I do know that some of the employees were not real fond of some of the sharps and things that they were finding in the restrooms. And I think that we didn't sign up for this when we wanted to sell coffee for a living. So I think that is part of the Starbucks story. Another part of it is they've become awfully corporate. And homogenous, I think. And
hasn't that been the case for years and years and years?
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe it kind of catches up with them. But I think that's part of it.
I definitely think the labor disputes lately have had a big, influence on it.
Why do you say that? How so?
Well, I think so. Even driving into Seattle, hanging off one of the bridges on I-5 is, Seattle has been, or Starbucks, excuse me, has been, in a labor dispute for this many times. And, there's just all of these little tactics from, people organizing, probably people that work for Starbucks that are trying to put pressure on the company that I think has an impact on the average Seattleite who's saying, yeah, you know what, I'm going to go to a different little coffee shop. I don't need to go to Starbucks. And I mean, so this story in particular is about the Seattle customers, gravitating away from, Seattle's very well-known coffee brand, which is Starbucks. And I just think that between the labor and the recent dress code issue, Seattleites are probably like, you know what, I have better options for coffee. And I mean, Tully's
just to
went away
fill
a long
listeners
time ago.
in, there's a strike. About 1,000 baristas, I don't know if they're still on strike, as far as I know there are, protesting the fact that they used to be able to wear a lot of colors and patterns, and now they have to wear a solid black shirt and either khaki, black, or blue denim bottoms under their aprons.
Yeah.
The Starbucks says that makes the green aprons pop, and that's familiar for customers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it, made some people mad in Seattle for another reason. Because when I saw this on national news, it was, of course, Seattle baristas that were saying, I can't wear this. I can't wear this, and just drawing attention again to, why would I? If I'm a, true Seattleite and I really want to support my city, I don't need to support corporate, Starbucks, and we all know. Well, we all have an opinion about their coffee anyway.
Right. True.
There it is.
We got to roast.
Yeah, roasting the roasters for sure. Yeah, I mean, you can't shop at a Starbucks that isn't there. And so, like, if they're not there, people won't be spending their money there. I think, there's a very common sort of, I guess, a motto at this point, right? There's no such thing as ethical consumption under capitalism. And I think that that's patently false. And I think that many people right now, especially in Seattle, are feeling really powerless about how to express their values in a society that feels really challenging. And like many of the things that people believe in the city of Seattle are being deeply challenged, if not undermined and overturned right now. And so people are looking for ways. And you see that with like the consumer behavior around places like Target and what's happening with their sales there. But for this one, I really think it does come down to the fact that there just like are no Starbucks to shop at. And if you go to the Fifth and Pike one that had closed, right across from there is the new Cedar Hall. They've got Olympia Coffee in there, and that place is popping at all times like you can't even get a seat. So Seattleites are buying coffee. They're just buying it at different places. And, to the kind of question around the price point, like if you've got $7.50 to spend on a vanilla latte, which is my order. There's a lot of different places where you can go and do that and feel pretty good about it and get to know your barista's name. Shout out to Mario. Like, hey, Mario. This is there's just a glut of consumer options that are like on par with the price point, and to your point, like maybe even a better quality product and experience.
Right. One of the things that also happened recently with Starbucks with their new CEO is that they are shrinking their menu, and they are also eliminating a ton of these promotions that Starbucks was really known for, half off at 2 p.m. And if you're in a city, that's easy to go walk across the street, or as Howard Schultz wanted it, any corner, and get your, discount Starbucks. Now, if you're in the suburbs trying to go to a Starbucks to get your $2 coffee, you have to drive $3 worth of gas. Forget it.
Yeah. Nobody mentioned wait times either. I noticed in this story that I read about the dress code strike, a shift supervisor said, customers don't care what color our clothes are when they're waiting 30 minutes for a latte. Wow. That is fair. If I were waiting 30 minutes, I would also turn a color that is bright and festive.
That's what I call a lunch break right there.
It's your entire lunch break. All right. I'm also protesting the provocative nudity in their logo that the company refuses to change. So
wow.
Yeah. I've asked Mayday USA to really join with me in that protest.
Sad.
That's false.
That's sad for you, Bill.
That's false. Okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to do a little rezoning and a few more stories we haven't had a time to mention, and smile about something. So come right back and see if I'm wrong.
KUOW-FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham. It's 12:45 BBC News Hour coming up at 1 o'clock right after Week in Review.
Support for KUOW comes from Jazz Night School, an adult music education community featuring Black American music with combos, big bands, vocals, and classes, helping beginners build skills and challenging advanced musicians to grow. Registration and more at jazznightschool.org. And from Eco Design and Maintenance, family-owned and specializing in start-to-finish exterior design using materials and methods that help to reduce environmental impact. From landscapes to hardscaping, outdoor spaces designed to be functional and long-lasting. More at eco-seattle.com.
Hey, I'm Katie Campbell from KUOW's Book Club. Join our summer book club series with the Seattle Public Library, featuring 3 books, 3 events, and 3 fantastic local authors. Find out more at kuow.org/events.
KUOW live events sponsored by Finney Ridge Painting and BECU.
Man, we have not stopped talking about specialty coffee orders for the last, what was that, a 2-minute break? Yeah. Do you think that every place is I wish listeners could have heard you two just go at it about the different deals and orders.
Types of coffee.
I mean, I'll give a shout out to the egg bites.
Egg
Egg
bites?
bites are worth
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Always get the ristretto at Starbucks, guys.
What is that?
It's less of the shot. You don't get the full black burnt coffee. You get
Uh-huh.
it when it's still caramely.
Oh, okay. Alex, you look as perplexed as I am.
Taking notes.
I don't know. They talked about the Starbucks app. didn't know such a thing existed.
Oh,
Yeah.
I do have that.
Yeah, member since 2010. Or Gold Star member
Congratulations.
since 2010. I know. I
Mario's
still
been
have
a
the
member
plastic.
since 2008. Mario's Alex Hudson's favorite barista. Big fan of the show. Okay, so let's get back on track, shall we? We have Maia Espinoza here from Center for Latino Leadership. We have Alex Hudson, also a coffee fan, a drink fan, executive director of Commute Seattle. And then we have me, Bill Radke, and Seattle Times, Alex Fryer. I don't know. What do you drink? What are you passionate about, Alex?
I have 2 cups of coffee a day.
Okay.
Yeah. Americano.
Americano. All right. My dad called it JPOC, just plain old coffee. That's a dad thing. Okay, so a couple more items before we wrap up the show. Seattle just got legally denser to comply with the new state law. City Council is allowing 4 units on a single lot citywide, up to 6 units if you're close to transit or the housing is deemed affordable. That's set at a certain level. Most of the city already allows 3 units, main home, 1 or 2 accessory dwelling units. But these new rules will mean more townhomes and row houses and stacked flats with the individual entrances. This is basic state compliance. The city is still debating the roadmap for the next 20 years. Alex Fryer, will Seattle's ubiquitous suburban neighborhoods of driveways and yards disappear? I think that's going away in our lifetimes. We're old men, but
yeah, I don't
use your imagination.
I don't know, but you mentioned townhomes and stacked flats, and those are dwellings that share a wall. Those are all good things. I'd be all for it if this creates those kinds of density housing in terms of middle housing. What I don't want, what I've seen down in areas like South Park, is 6 individual standalone small houses on a lot stretched out to the very edges of the lot, with nary not only a tree, not anything green on that lot. If you've seen one of those that has 6 units in there, it is striking and it looks dystopian. So I'm hoping that is not the case, and the future that you just illuminated of townhomes and stack flats is what we get, because that would be good.
Okay. Anyone share Alex Fryer's dystopia?
People are into that. They don't want yards. They just need their little space. They want a single family. They don't want to share a wall. It's not my, favorite look either, but those things go like hotcakes.
They do sell. Yes, you are.
Yeah, but, it would definitely change the look of the city for sure. And, just a, quick personal story. I used to live in the Central District, and I was renting this super old, 1920s farmhouse on a beautiful garden in the middle of the Central District, right? Right in the middle of all these townhomes popping up all over the place. The neighbor, who had a similar home, bought that house just so they wouldn't block his son from his garden with a townhome. Such a precious, upstory type, that I agree with you, Alex, that Seattle has its own unique charm, and, to see things like that, bulldoze the whole thing, pave it, and then put little patches of grass is doesn't look like the city. So I do hope there's something different, but we need a lot of solutions to housing issues. So, if it's more density in the cities, that's how it's got to be.
Yeah, I talk about consumer choice, right? Being able to buy a second home to protect your vegetables. Sounds like somebody who is not experiencing some of the dystopia that is caused by not being able to afford to live in the city that you love anymore, right? And so I obviously am an extremely pro-density person. We are in the middle of an extremely brutal housing shortage, and it's escalating rent and prices. Your paper just reported around how our city has got some of the highest income renters because of our inability to produce enough housing that people can kind of buy and grow into. And so creating some of these options around fourplexes and sixplexes, and I think is absolutely the right way to go. And I would love to be able to have the option to live in a place like that. I live in a very, very, very old apartment that's really cool and charming, and we love it. I've lived there for forever, but there's just not a lot of options. I do agree with you that the way that we've created those big vertical kind of townhouses it's certainly not what I would like, and they're not very age friendly, right? Because it's just so vertical and so narrow, and you can't age into them, and so that's why we just need more and more diversity. I think of housing types. I do think it's important to note that upzones don't come with bulldozers, so it's not like we're like raising every home in Magnolia and putting up a sixplex everywhere.
Right.
You still maintain your property rights, and you can develop or not, and that will take quite some time. I don't know if everybody's been as watching interest rates and as I do. I'm involved in affordable housing production. But we're not in the middle of a boom cycle right now, but this does prepare us to drive down the cost of housing production so that more people can find great places to live and grow and raise their families here in this beautiful city.
Seattle's got, I think they set the next date for October to come up with a 20-year comprehensive plan. We'll watch all that stuff. Let's mention a few more things we haven't that happened this week. Did you hear about the reversal on the city council ethics code? That I just heard about that this morning. The city had this rule: if a council member had a potential conflict of interest, they'd recuse themselves and not vote on that issue. Last week, the council voted to change the ethics code so members could vote if they disclosed their conflict of interest, even if they personally had a financial interest. And the sponsor of that change, Councilmember Kathy Moore, said, well, when your district representative can't vote on an issue, then you are disenfranchised. And that was very controversial. A lot of people objected. Today, Councilmember Moore withdrew the proposal and said, quote, my conversations with colleagues have made it clear that we require more time to ensure we get this right. So we'll put a pin in that, as they say. What else happened this week? Well, Seattle's only RV lot for homeless people is being replaced by a 3-story pickleball complex. The RV lot is somewhere you can park without having to worry about the 3-day parking limit, and there are behavioral health pros helping you get into housing. So when you heard the lot's being paved over for 20 pickleball courts, you might have had that reaction of, wow, that seems like warped priorities. But according to Seattle Times reporter Greg Kim, the group running the RV lot says, don't be mad at pickleball.
They've seen some of the frustration being directed towards this developer, and they're saying, no, that's not where it should be put. We should be commending this organization for temporarily allowing us to use this land when they didn't need to.
So it was always a temporary lease, and the RV group says they've got a new spot, more space. They're not saying where that is yet until a contract is actually signed. So, and by the way, I heard that on Seattle Now. If you're not listening to Seattle Now every morning, highly recommend it, KUOW podcast. What else? Seattle's former police chief suing the city and mayor for wrongful termination. Adrian Diaz was fired last year and later claimed he was discriminated against. And the mayor's office said the litigation process will demonstrate the truth. Am I missing anything super important that happened this week? That the UW Medical Center lab technician with a green card who's lived in the U.S. for 50 years was released from the immigration detention center in Tacoma. This is Llewellyn Dixon, whom ICE detained in February when she got back from the Philippines, where she was born.
It was horrific. It was awful. It is
not the Philippines, by the way. She's talking about detention.
It was horrific. It was awful. It is crowded, super crowded. They release maybe 9, they bring back 7, they release 1, they bring 3.
Immigration officials said they were trying to deport her because she was convicted of embezzlement 24 years ago. Her sentence then was to spend a month in a residential reentry facility and pay back the money. This week's judge said she released Dixon because of her history of work and paying taxes, and Dixon says she expects to return to her job, and her family says she plans to apply for citizenship. Any comment? Anything I missed? Should we go to...
You said kiosk. We were going to talk about that.
Yeah,
oh, kiosk. Yeah, okay, tell me. Digital, we got like 2 minutes. Digital kiosk. Sorry.
So
so,
sad that that's what we're excited to talk about.
Why are you so interested? These are
Oh.
some people don't like they say it's surveillance and it's advertising and
Yes,
downtown.
it certainly is. It's certainly going to be surveillance. It's going to be advertising. I think we should accept that. I could still be excited about it. I mean, Alex, it sounds like you're kind of with me that it's like don't pretend you have any level of security or privacy left. If we're going to accept these in the city, I would say, despite what anyone says, that is definitely a possibility. That said, what a cool techie device to be able to go and, find out what maybe a local restaurant has a special or something. I just think it's such a cool Seattle tech thing, and I hope they come through.
Hudson?
Yeah, I'm paying $125 a month to carry a tracking device around with me, and just like all Americans. So, but they are very clear that there's not plans for them to be surveillance tools right now. I just like it. I think it's hard to know what's going on, and I want to be able to give people information about the transit system and light rail and what's going on in our city. And it's really hard. Like, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know where to go find what you don't know. And so bringing information directly to people about how to get around and enjoy our city, I think is really valuable.
Fryer?
I got nothing on that one.
Yeah,
I haven't seen them. I don't really have much of an opinion.
Well, they're not in yet. When are they coming?
Well, they got a demo somewhere, don't they?
Oh,
Don't they have a demo?
Yeah, there's a couple of demos there in many cities across the country. There's the council still has to approve the final permits, and then they'll be installed in time for the World Cup.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good catch. Anything that made you smile before I wave goodbye on YouTube?
Free fishing weekend.
Tell me.
Well, the Department of Fish and Wildlife has this. I think it's every year, but they just announced it this week or last that this weekend only. Well, I think it's the weekend, June 7th and 8th. Excuse me. Free fishing. You don't.
So no
for
permit?
certain fish. You don't need a permit.
Okay.
You can't. I think certain salmon are off limits. There's a couple of limitations that you can't fish. But other than that, especially after they raised prices on fishing license, this is a good deal, guys. Go
Great.
fishing.
Happy, yes.
I feel sorry for the fish. There are
Sad.
the city announced this week. I thought it was great. Free swimming lessons. You just
I
go
love
down
that.
to a beach that has a lifeguard, and they'll teach you how to swim. And
Pretend
for
to
kids,
drown, and you learn a lot.
yeah, for
Catch a
6
fish while you're in there.
Yeah, maybe so. 6 to 16 are the ages for that. I'm really happy that they're doing that.
Very good.
Yeah,
Alex
that's
Hudson?
fantastic. Waterfront bike lanes. I went and rode down there on Wednesday when it was so beautiful and nice out, and it was just exquisite.
Yeah.
I had been, I'd had a question mark about how successful that infrastructure was going to be, but boy, is it amazing. We
Yeah.
were so lucky to live here.
That's a lovely spot. And that's a lovely place to end our show. Alex Hudson, Executive Director, Commute Seattle. Seattle Times, Ed Board member, opinion writer, Alex Fryer. Maya Espinoza runs the Center for Latino Leadership. Thank you all for being on our show this week.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thanks to producer Kevin Kniestet and Bernard Willett, Juan Pablo Chiquiza, and Hans Twite. I'm Bill Radke, and we have a date 1 week from now on Week in Review.
Closing in quickly on 1 o'clock, BBC NewsHour coming right up. KUOW FM Seattle.